Welcome back to the Secular Homeschool Revolution. I am your host, Ashley. This podcast is for BIPOC progressive secular homeschoolers and for allies who are actually doing the work. The ones who are unlearning, who are listening, pausing, and choosing something more intentional, not only for themselves, but for their families. I'm really glad you guys are here today. Before we get into today's episode, I want to take a moment to say this out loud. I am deeply grateful for this podcast. It started as a creative outlet for myself and, like a hobby. I wanted to learn the different components, how to do it, how to start it. I really was a fan of a bunch of podcasts. And it honestly has grown into something that's taught me just as much as it's reached other people. And from my very first episode drop in January of 2024 to closing out this year, I have officially reached 9,000 listens across the platforms. That did share data with me, and I lost some when I switched from Spotify for some reason, but still it was 9,081. So I'm over 9,000. And that's wild in the best way. Because of the show, I've been invited to speak at a couple of homeschooling conventions. I've also been able to practice discernment. Does this align for me? Is this the best situation? Am I ready for this opportunity? Right? Unfortunately, it just didn't align with me this year, but it was still cool that I was asked. And I think most importantly, I've learned more about myself as a homeschooling parent, as a woman, as a partner, as a writer, and overall as an impact maker. And when I started this as just like a hobby, I didn't expect any of that. I really didn't know what to expect, but none of that was on my radar. And so I'm, reflecting on what this year has been for me and just different milestones that I've reached, because through this podcast, I most definitely have learned to celebrate the small wins and the big wins. And so now I want to also look at the growth. What are my areas of growth? I'll go on these runs where I'll post on social media and I'll tag my podcast here or there. And I always see a spike of 100, 200 listens. And then if I don't post it if I don't post something on TikTok or Instagram and I just release an episode, it'll mild out. So I'm going to challenge myself to post more on social media to get my podcast out there. I've had some incredible comments left on a lot of my episodes. One of the biggest feedbacks that I appreciate is the types of conversations we have here that aren't on other shows. And I listen to lots of different homeschooling podcasts. One, to see if there's information I can learn from them, whether it's homeschooling content or how they're navigating their podcasts. And so I'm a person who loves to learn, and I've been enjoying what I've been learning here. So what I'm saying is I am really going to commit to posting more on social media and having guests on my show. I was so scared of it. I did try with Ariel. Shout out to Ariel for being so kind and patient with me earlier this year. But I don't know what, we did a whole interview. Lots of it ended up being missed. It went missing. The file got deleted or it didn't download correctly. And I wasn't as prepared as I thought. And then when I had to go and look at what to do after the said interview and all of the editing, it just felt really big. And I'm okay because that meant I wasn't ready at this time, but I've been deep diving. I've been looking at different editing softwares. I've made some podcasting buddies who have shared tips and what systems and editing software that they use. So I'm excited to dive in with this podcast for 2026. I will say that this goes back to my own personal self-growth, that it has helped check me and stretch me and get clearer about what actually aligns and what doesn't. And that alone has been worth it. And this has been like my thing outside of my relationship with my husband and my kids. This has been solely my gift to myself. So if you've listened to one episode or all of them, or you've shared it, or you've liked a social media post, or you've sent me a message, or you've commented saying that I made you feel seen, thank you. And I truly mean that from the bottom of my heart. So to get into today's episode, it is called What My Kids Taught Me This Year, that no curriculum. This episode is more about changing the dynamic or flipping the dynamic, the power dynamic specifically, because homeschooling is one of those things that can easily replicate the same system we all agreed to opt out of. And this old habit can rear its ugly head where we think we're the adults, we know everything. Our kids, they're supposed to be these spaces that are empty, and we have to feed them all of their knowledge, and they are supposed to be compliant and learning all the things we have to offer them. And at the end, there's this box that we can successfully check and say, this was an amazing year, and they received all of my great knowledge. But if you're here listening to this podcast, I feel like as a community, that's not the kind of homeschooling we've all co-signed to build, right? And this year, my kids reminded me that learning is about relationships, that autonomy is practiced, and we can't assign it, and we can't script it, we can't force it, and that resistance carries wisdom if we're willing to listen. So I want to share 4 things my kids taught me this year around autonomy, resistance, emotional literacy, and just being more aware of myself as the adult in the space. When I think about autonomy this year, I think of Parker, my oldest, my 13-year-old. She's been the reason why we started this journey, and it was the end of 2016, early 2017. So homeschooling has been the normal between us. I've been her normal for like teaching, taking her there, discovering information. It's been me and her for the long haul. And she has no desire to go back to a traditional brick and mortar. I had no desire to teach, upper middle school, high school stuff. So the micro school just seems like a good fit, right? And a lot of the kids, it is associated with the co-op they attend. It grew into a micro school. So she knew quite a bit of the kids. And so we're like, okay, we will do this. So it's been incredible to witness who she is away from me, because I will preference to say she is a very happy kid. She's very whimsical. I feel like she just goes through this world where she fully embraces her quirkiness, but she's soft and she's curious, and she's just a great laugh that is so loud, and she just has so much joy. And I will say, people do mistake that for immaturity. And I'll say she's a processor. And so she'll like see a situation, and we as a world have to slow down for her. And then she makes her decision, but she's definitely not someone who can be rushed. And I love that for her, because I get all panicky and anxiety and aware of what people think of me. And that's an area of growth for me. I need to not project on her. So I love that about her. But what she's shown this year has been nothing short of maturity. And I want to point at, like, it's not the over adultification or like the seriousness for approval, but her overall self-awareness. She found a love for biology, and she really loves the teacher, but she just loves the information. She's excited about the test. She loves the notes. Like, She loves biology. And I love that it genuinely clicked for her. She's created boundaries with friends. She's made very intentional and thoughtful decisions around relationships with people and situations. And, I want to teeter back and forth, and she's handling it, and she's navigated those group chats. Remember, I had a whole thing about how cringe group chats were. I think it's a few episodes back, but she's navigated group chats with so much discernment and just like a level of care that at 13 is insane to me. I know there's been like certain group chats where, there'll be kids like chatting 50 million 11 times a day, and she's like muted it, or she's just like completely not answered it. And so when I was going through her phone, I was like, oh, why does this one have like 300 and something messages? And she's like, oh, check it. It's just noisy. And I was like, oh, good choice of words. And she reaches out to who she wants to text with. I just like, this is insane just to see who she is. And I would say what stands out the most to me is that she doesn't need to she doesn't feel the need to be everywhere and to be with everyone, and she doesn't have FOMO. Like, she doesn't have fear of missing out on things. Right? Again, I have to check my level of projection, because I was a kid who I felt the pressure. Well, wait, it's two sides of the coin, right? Because I didn't feel like the party started until I got there. But that's why I always wanted to be at the party, because in the back of my mind, I was like, the party is not even going to start if I don't go. Delusional, I know. But she doesn't have a pressure to say yes to everything. Like, she has declined meetups, or I didn't know about a meetup until like a mom like reached out to me to see if it was a go or not. And then when I talked to her about it, she was like, oh no, I said no thank you. She's said no to events with new friends, and not out of fear, but just saying she wasn't up to it. And I was like, oh, are you sure? Is there anything wrong? Did something happen? And she was like, I don't want to go. And then I'm like peeking in her room, and she's fine. She really just didn't want to go. And it's my inner child, like, what is wrong with her? I'm a yes mom. I will take you. She's like, nah. She's a meh about certain things. She's coordinated things that she wanted to participate and engage in. She's had just like really uncomfortable moments that she's had to like address. And, she's sometimes asked me for support, and other times she's like, I think I got it, but I'm proud of her, and I hope she's proud of herself, because she is who she thinks she is. And academically, right? I feel like autonomy showed up there for her too. She had to adjust. She had to balance her schedule. She had to learn what her capacity is. The goal was for her to start dual credit. She really wanted to do it. She was excited. And then emails were coming in from professors, and she didn't respond and missed the deadline. So when I'm like, hey, what is the problem? I was like, what happened? She's like, I just got overwhelmed. Because it was just too much. So through our conversation, we did realize that it was just too much too soon, and we can have a pause. That's autonomy, ladies and gentlemen. Like, what? And, I don't think there was any curriculum that I could buy that could have taught me the way that she did, just on like, what does it look like as a homeschooling parent who's been the main instructor, and like, what does it do for them socially when they're out there without being helicoptered or anything, and like, what does that look like on the phone? Because I know the conversations I have with my kid about cell phone usage. I know we have boundaries and limits, and we know we have like conversations about if those boundaries or limits are crossed. I don't know if you can hear my son in the background. He since he turned 5, his volume stays at like 5,000. Okay, so I do want to give you a reflective question. Where in your homeschooling are you being invited to step back and trust who your child already is? I personally wish I would have had this moment sooner, but I think it's happening when it's supposed to. Let's get into the resistance piece. Resistance has a terrible reputation, especially in education. As a society, we were taught to look at it as defiance, as being lazy, as being a problem, as it's something that has to, needs to be corrected, and we got to push through until we get the outcome that we want. Like, you will comply, you will obey. And this year, I feel like resistance showed up for us in the biggest way through curriculum, especially with my middle kid. She is very outspoken and she's very assertive, very confident in who she is. I think I have like a social media video where I share her affirmations. She wakes up daily telling herself that she is that girl. I love that for her. Do I love it for myself to parent it? It's a challenge. And then we have very similar faces. So I don't like looking at my body language. I don't like looking at that face that looks so offended or pressed. And her clapbacks are so fast. I mean, it's entertaining, but sometimes I get caught off guard and I have to remember what kind of parent I'm trying to grow into being. But she had beef with the evolution science curriculum that I purchased. I thought it was great. I loved it. I spent my monies on it. I wanted her to like it. That was like pride and ego on my part. I get it, right? And she was not feeling Beast Academy this year. She's been doing it the last maybe 2.5 years. Has been thriving. So last year, of course, right, when our kids like a snack, we think we need to go to Costco and like stack up on it. And then when we stack up on it, they're like, nah. And it goes bad, right? So that's what happened with Beast Academy. Last year, there was like a group buy going on. And so the group buy is amazing. If you can afford it, I definitely would seek out spaces that do it. So you pay basically 1 year up front and you get access to 2 years. So this is like completing her first year, I think. And she just didn't want to do Beast. So she was tired of the puzzle. She wanted a math book. She didn't want to work on the computer anymore. And I was like, well, we can print out some sheets. And she said no. And so I was trying to problem solve it because I'm thinking of money invested. It feels comfortable. It's what we know. I've, especially with the evolution, I was researching, tried to motivate her. I was like, you can do it. I know you don't love it. It's okay. We'll just push through. And I will say also, I am not one of those parents who think my kid has to exude joy through every experience that they have with me. I want them to experience like disappointment. I want them to understand, failure or no's and all of those things, right? There's growth in it. But with curriculum, with learning, I am a little sensitive because of my own relationship with education and my own experiences. Again, and that's me checking my program, but I never want them to not have a love of learning. And when I say, oh, you don't want to do this particular science, that doesn't mean we remove it and we don't do it all. We can go on this journey to find one that you like. And if you just can't find one, well, we need to come to an understanding where, hey, science just isn't something you enjoy, but we still need to receive the information, right? So she was like, no, she did have a solution. She wanted to go back to chemistry. She did take science mom chemistry, but her goal was to memorize the periodic tables and all of these things. So she was like, she pled a good case. So she wasn't actively saying no science. She just said, not this version right now. I want to do something else. Okay, so I was able to check myself and see what was my biggest beef about it, because we were starting to experience some tension because I was, again, trying to move us through it. And she had clearly communicated how she felt about both of those things. And I was solely thinking about money and just, again, like I told you, it felt safe. And she's getting frustrated and I'm getting frustrated. And then I feel like she's not seeing my point of view, which she's not. She's 9. But again, that's about me. And she's feeling unheard. And so we had to have a, come to the middle meeting. And so I heard her. I respected her. She said she wanted to revisit chemistry. Okay. She wanted to do math in a book. Okay. Ordered Math with Confidence. And I feel like that meeting we had mattered. Not because she was refusing to learn, but because she was advocating for how she learns. I had to sit with, again, my own emotions. I had to, this like urge, I had to like stick to the plan, or I was feeling the pressure to make these curriculums work because of my financial and personal investments in them. And I had to say, wait a minute, who are you? What is the mission? What is going on here, girly pop? Because homeschooling, right? We're here collectively in this community. It's our homeschooling from a decolonized lens, and we ask different questions. So who does it serve if I ignore what my child is telling me? Right? When I really listened, I heard overwhelm. I heard sensory fatigue. I heard a desire. I heard, she was wanting some slower learning. So we had to pivot. We revisited chemistry. We got the Math with Confidence off, and that's in a book. And I felt like the tension released, and we were able to like recalibrate our relationship in homeschooling and her relationship with the curriculum she was using for this year. And that's when it clicked. Resistance isn't the enemy of learning. Ignoring it is. Resistance is often the first signal that something needs to change. I want to talk about the emotional literacy piece for this episode because, y'all, my kids feel deeply. Like they can name emotions and they can name them without apologizing for them. They ask for space, even the 5-year-old. They can cry, they regulate it, they return, they address things. And watching this, again, because I'm one of those people who are reparenting myself, breaking generational curses, has required me to reflect on where I'm coming from emotionally. I personally grew up in a house where I was honest about my feelings, but I didn't have the language for them. I felt things strongly. I knew when something was wrong. I would speak up. I just didn't know how to articulate it. And I was a screamer. Like, I'm like, what do you mean? Like, I was a screamer. And I want to say this clearly. That didn't come from me just being dramatic or too emotional or out of control. That was rooted from me feeling unheard. And when you don't have the language, right, volume becomes your tool, because you may not, you're trying to say something, it's just not coming out, and you're frustrated that the people in the space aren't picking up what you're putting down. And when you don't feel seen, right, everything just feels so much more intense, more sensitive. The signal becomes more sensitive with things, and context matters. So it helped me understand why I've been so intentional about emotional literacy in our house. We talk about feelings. We name them. We have uncomfortable moments. We slow down long enough to like have conversations about them. I would say we're a pretty emotional household, a feelings household, and we don't all express our feelings in the same way. And that's okay. We're not the same people. I'm not expecting them to meet an emotional threshold and act it out in a certain way. But I don't want to be the family that an incident happens and we sweep things under the rug. Resentment grows there, distrust grows there. And I want to respect myself and my kids to not do that to them. And I know that the way they're able to express themselves and articulate through things, that didn't happen by accident. It came from my decision to not pass down the part where kids have to escalate to be acknowledged. This year, my kids reminded me that emotional literacy isn't about being calm all the time. It's about being understood. It's about having words before frustration turns into an explosion. And the realization really just reminded me that I have work, continued work to do. And I got to see my small win, like how far I've come. I don't scream at my kids. I'll talk crazy to them. I'm not a passive parent. And I think when I think about my parenting, it is so strange. Like, this is going to be a tangent, but the way people think I parent is interesting to me. I'm a gentle parenter, but I'm not a passive parenter. And I'm not a strict parent. I believe talking everything through, with my kids. There's been times where I've had to take things away from them, and not in like a discipline form, but more so of like, hey, you're not ready to have access to this. So we're going to make different choices. But when I'm talking to people think I'm like this micromanager, this super helicopter parent. I go through all the things. They can't do X, Y, Z. No, I try to meet my kids in the middle and offer advice. I mean, it's the middle changes a little bit, right? The older that they get. But yeah, you guys, I don't look up every book my kid reads. They read too much, and half the time don't even realize when they get new books. I don't do that. I don't really monitor what they watch. They're not risque kids for the most part. I don't know. And I just don't micromanage those things. As often I do random look-sees through like the older kid's phone, but I haven't had any reason to feel like I'll do checks out of like safety, but I don't feel like there's been any behaviors on her part that warranted that type of, having to look over her shoulder about every little thing, because just like, I'm building trust with her, she's building trust with me, and we have to be able to respect each other, to an extent. You may agree with me, you may disagree. You may disagree with how I put my kids to bed. Everyone goes to their rooms like at 9. That's your solo time. Read, draw, get creative. I don't want to see you. I've seen you all day. I need my own zen space, and I color, I write, I read. That's my quiet time too. And they put themselves to bed. Like even the little one, he knows to put his little moonlight on. I go in and pop in and check on him. He'll play his stories on the little thing and call it a day. We've worked really hard to make bedtime calm and no drama. And I do want to go back into the idea of like my own emotional literacy. I definitely feel that this year I had to understand my discomfort wasn't about their emotions or their actions or their behaviors, more so than it was about mine. Y'all, and when I go back and read these journal entries, oh my gosh, sometimes I'm like, girl, who were you? What was going on? But I like that I have that ability to reflect. And I've had to learn not to be so reactive, not to have this urge to fix things quickly, or I have to like move past this feeling because I don't like it, or I'm trying to chase some dopamine. Like I've had to balance it, and also had to understand quick decisions don't have to be made just to make the space and time more productive. Because there's just no way that you can rush emotional fluency. When I'm processing things, sometimes I have to say I need a moment, or I have to apologize, even though, I was the problem. No, that never happens. I'm never the problem. And sometimes it's just about me regulating myself. before I can actually lead anyone. So it was a lot of different components, and I feel like it's been humbling for me this year. And when we're decolonizing our homeschooling experience, it really isn't just about what we teach, but what we are refusing to pass down. You know, do we want to silence our kids? Is that a choice we want to make? Do we want to do everything in a sense of urgency? Do we want to see that emotions are not disruptions, but they're feedback? It's data. That's a communication, right? That something's not clicking, or it's not happening, or it's not going the way we want it to go. And that's a reflection to us as adults. We have to learn to listen. We have to listen to them. We have to listen to ourselves. And if we can balance that, then learning becomes safer for everyone. I feel like that's when we can build that relationship and deepen our connection and just have overall trust that we both have space to grow. I would definitely label this year as being called out. Like, I was the adult that was being called out. I've been called out on my tone, on my assumptions, on moments where I was just moving too fast without having all the information or checking my own feelings. And I've been called out about defending myself and not listening. There is a video on my TikTok about a conversation I had with my 13-year-old where she felt like I was dismissive of her, and I shared clips in the dynamics of our conversation. And I was like, damn, I did that. Like, oh, it was uncomfortable. And I was like, wow, she was right. I did silence her. I was dismissive. I was diminishing her. So it was all these layers, and I had to sit with that. Ooh, I was not proud of myself, but I was proud of my response because I had to listen. That doesn't mean kids are running your household. They don't get to make all of the decisions. It means we are literally modeling accountability. But if you're an adult who struggles with accountability, you're going to be the parent modeling and teaching your kids what that version that you know. So there might be an area of growth that has to happen. Accountability is hard. It's uncomfortable. It doesn't feel good. But it means we show them that power can be held with humility. This year reminded me that homeschooling isn't about control. It is about relationships. It's about trusting our kids as full humans. It's about honoring joy as wisdom, and remembering that learning flows both ways. It's not just a one-way street. It's not a downstream river. It's a mutual, space for not only you, but your kid. So here is what I want to do. I want to invite you this week to notice when resistance shows up. Notice when there's some autonomy being practiced, and ask yourself, not like, don't get in your head and say, how do I fix this? But what am I supposed to learn from this? What is this teaching me? And hopefully that will do several things for you. I hope it grounds you. I hope it forces you to have an honest conversation with yourself. I hope it forces you to have an honest conversation with your kids, and it deepens you. It deepens the depths of your soul and who you're trying to show up as, because I think that's responsible. And if this episode resonated with you, share it with someone who's a new homeschooler, previous homeschooler, just anybody. Somebody left me a dope comment who said they love my podcast and they're not homeschooling yet. But it really helps them with reflection of their parenting. And y'all, I'm not an expert of anything. I'm a very intentional person. I like to learn. In my life, I'm a very much an old soul. I had I just have a different insight, but this is me just being and sharing my imperfections, my areas of growth, the understanding of why I am and looking at the past to see where those roots are. And I'm wanting to have that conversation with you guys on this podcast. So hopefully you're up for the challenge. If you haven't, please go give me a 5-star on whatever platform you're listening to. Leave a review if you're able to. Um, it really does help this work. It helps, I don't know, the way the different algorithms on the different spaces, the more comments or reviews you have, they'll move it up. So please do me that huge favor and a favor for a family who might just need this community. As always, come back when you're ready. You're not behind, you're not failing, you're building something different. And what we're doing here collectively is revolutionary. Also, don't forget to check out my website, www.secularhomeschoolrevolution.com. You can listen to my podcast. I also have a blog. My most recent blog talks about how I'm using the 12 magical nights to empower my daughters and like how we looked at winter solstice this year. Again, it is www.secularhomeschoolrevolution.com.